Here we have gathered side by side, circle of friendship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan. Unitarian, because some of our ancestors thought that there was one God, not three, as the Trinitarians believed. Universalist, because others of our ancestors believed in universal salvation, that there was ultimately no hell. All these were heretical opinions, and so we Unitarian Universalists, we UUs, have learned to live with and even value heresy. So whatever your theological position, whether, to quote a hymn, whether you're a Catholic, a Hindu, an atheist, a Jain, a Buddhist, or a Baptist, or a Jew, you are welcome here. Perhaps, wherever you fall on the spectra of gender identity or sexual orientation, you are welcome here. Perhaps you have come to learn. Perhaps you've come to be inspired. Or maybe you're simply curious. You're welcome here. We try to be a diverse, evolving spiritual community, acting for a better world. That's our mission. We are UUFM, and we strive to be a vibrant and inclusive congregation known as a safe haven and a force for social justice. So again, welcome.
Thank you, Larry. Glad to be convening the service with you. My name is Pastor Isabel Call, and it's my honor to serve as the minister of this congregation. We have just a couple announcements today. First of all, those of you here in the sanctuary will have noticed we don't have paper orders of service. Well, Larry and I will try to walk you through the morning. It's fairly standard, although we'll have a couple of opportunities for small conversations. The other announcement is that next Saturday, there will be a concert in this space with Jim Scott, who's a Unitarian Universalist musician, responsible for some of the hymns that we sing. And that concert is here on Saturday at 7 p.m. So all are welcome. There's a suggested donation, but everybody's welcome. So this is the time in our service when we acknowledge our difficult legacies. Today being September 11th, I know many of us are grieving still the loss of safety we experienced 21 years ago. We will have time to commemorate the anniversary later in our service. As Unitarian Universalists, we understand that we are interdependent with everyone on the planet, and the harms we cause each other are interlocked. We're growing our minds and hearts to understand the connections between terrorism, genocide, enslavement, and torture of religious heretics. But even when it's hard to understand, our bodies remember our ancestors' pain. We all hold a part of the legacy. And so we come together in body on Sunday mornings to heal. We ask this land to hold us, and we try to let ourselves be held. And so to help us this morning, I have a reading selection from the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. It is said that the Creator gathered together the four sacred elements and breathed life into them to give form to original man before setting him upon Turtle Island. the last of all beings to be created, first man was given the name Nanabozo. Nanabozo, part man, part Manido, a powerful spirit being, is the Anishinaabe culture hero and our great teacher of how to be human. In Nanabozo's form as original man and in our own, we humans are the newest arrivals on Earth, the youngsters, just learning to find our way. The Creator gave Nanabozo some tasks in his role as original man, his original instructions. They were to walk in such a way that each step is a greeting to Mother Earth. But he wasn't quite sure what that meant. Fortunately, although his were the first man's prints upon the earth, there were already many paths to follow, made by all those whose home this already was. With all the power and all the feelings of a human being, Nanabozo did his best with the original instructions and tried to become native to his new home. His legacy is that are all still trying, but the instructions have gotten tattered along the way, and many have forgotten. After all these generations since Columbus, some of the wisest of Native elders still puzzle over the people who come to our shores. They look at the toll on the land and say, the problem with these new people is that they don't have both feet on the shore. One is still on the boat. They don't seem to know whether they're staying or not. This same observation is heard from some contemporary scholars who see in the social pathologies and relentlessly material culture the fruit of homelessness, a rootless past. America has been called the home of second chances. For the sake of the peoples and the land, the urgent work of second man may be to set aside the ways of the colonist and become indigenous to place. But can Americans, as a nation of immigrants, learn to live here as if we're staying, with both feet on the shore? Let us find out together. Now for our chalice lighting.
The chalice lighting is written by Reverend Gretchen Haley, entitled, "We Gather to Draw a Wider Circle." In a world that feeds on moral outrage, we are here to cultivate moral courage. In a time that prizes picking sides, we gather to draw a wider circle. And in a culture that teaches us to get something for what we give and to ask, what's in it for me? We come to practice generosity and to remember that we are all in this together. In the midst of life's bitterness, we choose to sing, to give thanks, to laugh together, to be keepers of beauty, to offer a place of belonging for all who come in gladness and in pain, to resist the push to the next moment and the next, to slow down, to breathe more deeply, to feel a part of something greater for this hour and in this space. Let us be the change we wish to see. Come, let us worship together. Right now, the tide of social polarization and splintering sometimes seems irreversible, but still we strive to resist that tide. And here is a song to inspire us in that effort. So rise in body and or spirit and sing number 146, "Soon the Day Will Arise." Soon the day will arrive when we will be together and no longer will we live in fear. And children will smile without wondering whether on that day thunder clouds will appear. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share it together, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share it together, you and me. Some have dreamed, some have died to make a bright tomorrow, and our vision remains in our hearts. Now the torch must be passed with new hope, not in sorrow, and a promise made a new start. And the children will smile without wondering whether on that day thunder clouds will appear. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share it together, you and me. What a world there can be if we share it together, you and me. And now it's time for the story for all ages, but seeing no small people, I'll tell it to you. And I'll tell it the way I would have told it to the kids, because there may be things for you to learn too. Certainly are from me. This is a story about several belongings inspired by the book Pebble by Susan Millord. This is a true story mostly. I'll tell you when we come to the part that is made up. A long time ago, when my children were the age of you kids here, the kids and I were taking a sad and confused trip. Their mother and I were divorced, and she had moved to California. We were going from Kansas to California so that they could live with her during the school year and come back to live with me in Kansas in the summer. But where would they belong? California, Kansas, nowhere? The Kansas family was broken. A California family did not yet exist. We were all sad and confused. One evening, we stopped at a motel on a hillside overlooking a long, flat land. The sun was setting, and I timed its going down on my watch. That always takes a little over 2 minutes from the time the sun touches the horizon to the time that it disappears. That sunset, the regular way the sun always behaves, I find reassuring. It reminds me that I understand and am a part of nature. My daughter was walking around, looking up at the sun occasionally, but mostly down at the ground. Then she stopped and picked up a small stone, a pebble. And now we come to the made up part. What was the pebble thinking? The pebble lived near an ocean. Now, if you have been to the ocean, you understand that this is a lot of water. As far as you can see, there's water. All the way to the horizon, there's just water and sky. And it's important that this takes place at the ocean. In front of the pebble, there was a sandy beach and then water, as far as you could see. Behind the pebble was a rocky hill that even had a few boulders, big rocks. sitting on the hillside. It was quite beautiful, really. The sky was a clear blue. The wind was gentle. At night, the stars and moon lit up the landscape. But the pebble wanted more. If I were bigger, I could be part of a grand stone wall. I'd belong to it and be important. But the big rocks on the hill said, "You're too small. The tides have rubbed you down until you're just a small, smooth pebble." Now, you know what happens near the ocean? Twice a day, about 10 or 12 hours apart, the water comes way up the sand, all the way to where the pebble was sitting. And while there, the waves come whoosh in, and the pebble rolls up the hill and whoosh back out, and the pebble rolls back down. In the waves go and out, and the pebble rolls, and as it rolls, it bumps into other rocks, and the rough places on the pebble are worn down, and the pebble is made smooth. 10 or 12 hours, then the ocean moves back. 10 or 12 hours later, it happens again. And over the years, over the centuries, maybe over the millennia, the pebble is made smooth. Then the pebble thought, if I were smaller, real small as a grain of sand, then I could belong with the sand. Maybe I'd even get melted with the sand and turned into a beautiful glass window. But the sand said, "You're too big, way too big to be a grain of sand. Just forget about belonging with us and being in a picture window." And I remind you of the window glass here that is made by melting sand. You have to get the sand very hot, but the sand will melt and turn into glass. If there's stuff in the sand, you get colors, like the beautiful stained glass windows that we have by Sue Turner's office and in the Alsip Sanctuary. Well, the pebble couldn't be part of anything. It just did not belong. It was smooth, and it actually was pretty too. It had some shiny specks and lovely dark lines, but it felt that it didn't belong. Then one day a family came to the beach. They all had a good time swimming and wading and building sand castles. Finally, it was time to go home. The little boy in the family was walking up and down the beach. He wanted something to take home, something that reminded him of all the fun he had when the waves washed his feet, or the funny way that animals would burrow down into the sand if he touched them, or scuttle away sideways. He saw shells and feathers, but they were not exactly what he wanted. Then he saw the pebble. He could put it on the shelf in his room with the other things were important. The pebble heard him tell his parents that. "Wow," said the pebble, "I have a friend. I belong with stuff that's important to him. I'm part of a collection that is just as important as a stone wall or a picture window." So the boy picked up the rock. And the mother says, "Why are you keeping that? What is so special about that small rock?" And the boy answered using the metric that he was concerned about. What is so special about that small rock? It is smooth and pretty, he said. Now that's the made up part of the story. Back to the true story, the one that really happened. Remember, my daughter had just picked up a small stone. When my daughter brought me the pebble she had picked up, I asked her how did she choose which stone to pick up and keep? And she said, "It has to be smooth and pretty," just like the boy in the story. And how did it all turn out? For my son and daughter, that is. It took time, but finally they had two places to belong, Kansas and California. But that's a story for another time.
Thank you, Larry. So I would like to give everybody an opportunity now to reflect on belonging with each other. So I'm going to invite you to find a partner, somebody that you didn't come here today with, and just chat with each other. Ask your partner the question: when was the first time you thought to yourself, now I belong? Now I belong. So it'll just be 3 or 4 minutes for this conversation. And we will break into these small pairs later in the service too. If you don't want to participate, that's fine. Just say no thanks if somebody invites you. Now, Zoom folks, I believe Marissa is going to invite you into a breakout room. If you don't want to participate, just turn off your camera or put a note in the Zoom chat and she'll leave you out of a breakout room. So let's start that now. Turn to somebody and ask, when was the first time you thought to yourself, now I belong?
Here at the UUFM, the offering that we receive on Sunday morning goes to a special organization each month. That's part of our gathering for generosity, as opposed to what's in it for me that we've heard about in the chalice reading. This month, our Helping Hands recipient is the Sunflower Children's Collective, formerly known as Sunflower Casa. You can donate online by going to uufm.net, then clicking the donate link and choosing the particular fund to which you want to contribute. If you're here in person, you can put your offering in the basket at the back. That I forgot to, I hope it's there. I can't see it, but I'd also like to invite you to use this time to share your joys and sorrows this week. You can write on the paper near you. If there's not a piece of paper near you, raise your hand and I'll bring you one. You can write on the paper under the seat near you for me to read, or type something into the chat for Marissa to read. If you're here in the sanctuary, I will come by and pick up your joys and sorrows for Pastor Isabel to read. So without further ado, our offertory.
Thank you, Renee. We've come to the time in our service when we share our burdens and amplify our celebrations. So let us call up a spirit of generosity, vulnerability, courage, and compassion as we listen to what has been shared. We have one joy here in the sanctuary from Chris Bailey, who is very joyful to celebrate with Sandy Mead 18 years of marriage with a movie and dinner together. Thank you for sharing and congratulations. Marissa, any joys shared in Zoom land?
Yes, just a second here. Let me get myself spotlighted.
We can
and
hear
I will
you.
share. Hello, everyone. We have a couple joys. Dick Beeman says that his joy is that 5 days after total hip replacement surgery, he's doing well as possibly could be expected. And he attributes that largely to the assiduous ministrations of his dear wife, Sylvia. And then Kathleen Tenona says, our joy is that Maeve has been in Costa Rica for a week and is having a great time. She loves her host family and the Spanish is coming along. Ronan left Friday and has spent the weekend in DC. He leaves for Morocco this evening. And we're hoping he also has a great experience. We are missing them both. The house is much quieter. And then for our sorrows, Rob DeLong points out that we should acknowledge the passing of the Queen. She's was quite a figure in our history for a very long time. And then I guess I wanted to share that my sister Teresa passed away in August of 2013, but September 11th is the day I miss her the most. We both lived in DC and we had friends that worked at the Pentagon and at the World Trade Center in New York. So we spent that day together trying to check on our friends. And thankfully, all of our friends in New York and at the Pentagon got out, but I did lose 2 coworkers that day. That is all for the online folks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marissa. We have a sorrow here in the sanctuary, also about September 11th. Larry, remembering the events sadly and the fractured world that led to those events and the fractured world that still exists. So to lead us into some time of silence, I'm going to share a prayer by my colleague, Reverend Linda Hart. For September 11th, she writes this. Oh, my dear friends, my beloved community, has it ever felt so much like the world as we have known it is ending? We circle the year remembering the day when the towers fell. Circle the year remembering the cheer of the fall beginning, crisp air, children in school, rhythm and routine in place, all systems normal. Now it feels like normal won't return. We will live forever in the pall of smoke and fear. And yet there abides an intuition of hope and promise, born from our prayers, our love, our deepest wish for the world remade. If you cannot find that hope, that promise, we who can will lend you some. Offer you love, offer our hand stretched out to comfort, to hold, that we may all be strengthened. Here is the gift of community in all times, our joined hands, voices, lives, strengthen us all, that we may live more wholly, more truly, more authentically, that the world we dream might be a world made real. With that, Let us sit in silence. I imagine each of us old enough to remember 9/11 remembers exactly where we were when we found out. It was my second week of college, and I'd overheard a woman in the financial aid office recount what was going on to someone else. Walking through the square to class, the leaves were just starting to turn orange and fall to the ground. The beauty of the moment is so vivid alongside the confusion of being somewhere peaceful, but knowing something was terribly wrong and fearing that everything is terribly wrong. Unlike some of us, some of my classmates, I didn't have a personal connection to the loss, but I was far from home, just starting to settle in, and I never really did settle in. And in some ways, I haven't really settled into any of the other places I've lived since then. I wonder if that's part of how I metabolized the collective trauma of 9/11. If nowhere seems safe, then I'll just stay detached from place. I imagine I would come by that coping strategy honestly as a descendant of colonists and other Europeans, one foot always on the boat, unable to belong to place. I've come to understand and believe that acts of terrorism are carried out by people who have themselves been terrorized. I don't know for sure what makes the difference between someone terrorized who goes on to spread that hate and someone terrorized who heals and finds love for themselves and the world. But my body tells me it has a lot to do with choosing, when we can, to put both feet upon the shore, to find safe havens and enter them humbly, to allow ourselves to belong not just to a small group, but to the human race, to make places of safety for others to heal, to thrive, to live, to love, and to let go of hate. Though we may not be direct descendants of the first people to walk these lands, I trust that we can learn to live here as if we're staying, to set aside the ways of the colonist and become indigenous to place, as Robin Wall Kimmerer invites us to do. For the sake of our neighbors, descendants, and ourselves, we must allow ourselves and others to belong. My good friend Tom, of German ancestry, grew up in the Black Hills of South Dakota. The hills held him tightly and lovingly through the fear of the fall of 2001. Even now, he knows he belongs to the land and it will always be home, though he may roam elsewhere. On his most recent trip to the Black Hills, Tom visited 2 waterfalls in what is called Spearfish Canyon. The first one, upstream, is a place he often went as a child. He used to swim in the pool and climb on the rocks, finding his way behind the waterfall to stand wet, feeling the thundering power of the flowing water. But now, no one is allowed to explore the falls like this. Public safety standards have changed, and the ecology is being protected from human feet. It was disappointing to Tom on a cellular level, triggering that same old fear that home has vanished and grief that everything changes, youth falls away, we're not in control. But then Tom headed a mile or so downstream and he found another waterfall, one he'd never visited before. And he found his way behind the curtain of the river, and he was flooded with the same memories of childhood. That same cold, fresh glee and awe. It was, after all, the same water flowing downstream from the waterfall of his youth to the waterfall of the present moment. Tom could feel again that he belonged to the river. No matter how he grows and changes, he will always be home here in the water, in the flow. Even though we change throughout our lives, we still belong. And even though our environment changes, our community changes, we still belong. The earth helps us remember this. It's not the case, change is important, but it's not the case that we must change ourselves in order to fit in. That's not true belonging. That kind of thinking labels and excludes, it keeps hate alive. Reverend Matthew Johnson says, we need to question our assumptions about who makes a good fit and why we think people are puzzle pieces that have to slide into the existing system. He is quoted in a book of daily meditations for Unitarian Universalists recovering from addiction. An anonymous contributor adds these comments. Years ago, I didn't think that people with addictions fit into UUism, but we do. And I didn't think that people of the UU faith could participate in 12-step programs because the program's spirituality was not the same as ours. But that was wrong too. We may be puzzle pieces, but our puzzle is bigger and more complex than I originally understood. So let's stick with that for a minute. Supposing we are puzzle pieces, but not the kind that fit into existing systems of white, patriarchal, extractive, binary, heteronormativity. We are unique puzzle pieces, morphing all the time. We belong in the puzzle, but it's a really complicated, dynamic puzzle. And no one understands it fully, but we each hold a piece of the truth. So imagine that piece of truth as the center of each puzzle piece, something like the core self, something honest and abiding, held by a body of flesh and thought that changes shape over time. The edges of each of our puzzle pieces take shape through our relationships with each other. If we're willing to pause when we bump into each other, listening for the other person's core truth, maybe the puzzle shows us who we are, even if we don't understand the full picture. This is the idea with chalice circles here at UUFM. I know several folks here have participated in them. Who's participated in a chalice circle before? Yeah. So small groups of people sit together regularly and they reflect on the monthly themes. They practice sharing openly and honestly without advice giving or critique. Speaking freely in this way, we're often surprised by what comes out of our mouths, able to know our core selves better in the presence of others. We come to understand our collective truth as we negotiate our edges with others in the group, noticing similarities and differences, asking for what we need, setting boundaries, practicing accountability. It's an ideal venue to practice communication so that when we meet more distant neighbors, we have more capacity for solidarity. As a young adult uprooted from my UU community that I grew up with, I didn't have anything like a chalice circle. I valued diversity, and so I sought out relationships with people who were different from me. Peers at my predominantly African American high school, friends and colleagues and research partners in Indonesia and Kenya. But uprooted from my own community, I was working my edges before I knew my core. Attempting humility, I burdened my neighbors with my learning instead of putting my own 2 feet on their shore. And none of these cross-cultural relationships thrived. Coming back to Unitarian Universalism felt like the right thing to do, but when I did, it was difficult to find my way into a chalice circle. The UU church I tried had lots of social circles, but they were closed to newcomers. Not officially, it just didn't feel like I belonged. It was like a static puzzle with all the pieces in place, except for some odd-shaped holes that I didn't fit into. But I knew I belonged in Unitarian Universalism. I had been raised in this faith and I felt really stubborn about it. So I didn't give up. I took the overachiever route and went to seminary. I thought I might be able to zoom out and understand the puzzle. Really, I just came to understand myself better and my edges. And I learned how people and systems get stuck. Here at UUFM, I don't think we're stuck in the shape of a static puzzle. It's more like we're floating puzzle pieces that aren't quite close enough to really see each other and help each other grow in a comprehensive way. We need more opportunities to come in closer and know ourselves in a gentle, structured way. So this year, I want us to have new chalice circles. A lot of them, enough so that everybody here who wants to participate can, with empty chairs so that new people can join throughout the year. And so we can get together and learn how to do it so when people join next year and the following year, they know what they're joining. We know what we're welcoming them into. Over the summer, as I realized how much we need practices of belonging in small groups, I also realized what a big push it will be. The traditional structure has a facilitator for each chalice circle. who goes to a training in September. When I started listing the names of people who might facilitate, they were very familiar names. People already doing other leadership tasks here in the fellowship or out in the world. I thought, oh no, I want these people to be able to experience a chalice circle, not feel like they're in charge of one. So then naturally I thought, well, should I facilitate all of them? No, even as a full-time minister, I would wear out quickly. So here's an alternative. I've run it by a few people. I'm getting excited about it. We'll have multiple chalice circles. They'll each have a day and a time of the month that they meet. Some will meet in person, some on Zoom, some a mix of Zoom and in person. Each month at the end of your circle, you will choose someone to facilitate the next month's circle. And that person, along with the facilitators of the other circles, will come to a chalice circle with me that I will facilitate. They will get to experience it as participants first. And then at the end of the session, I'll help them prepare to lead with the same material. If they love facilitating, they can come back some other time, but other people in their circle will have an opportunity to try too. So we all get some practice and we all get some rest in the chalice circles. With these circles, if something comes up and you can't make it to your regular one, you can join another group for the month. And if someone decides they want to start in January, we can find them a circle instead of asking them to wait till next fall. So our chalice circles will be connected as a chalice web with different people making the connections each month. If this isn't totally clear, that's okay. If the members vote to move to full-time ministry today, this afternoon, at the congregational meeting, I will explain the chalice web more and invite you to sign up. If we stick with 3/4 time ministry, I won't be able to coordinate the chalice web, but we can do traditional chalice circles. We'll just need to find facilitators to take the training. My sense is that a ministerial boost each month would be useful, but you get to decide. Meanwhile, I've been trying to build in more opportunities for connection during our Sunday services. Before the pandemic, I understand it used to be commonplace to have large group discussions after the reflection. That has gone well when I've been here. I tend to prefer small group discussions or even pairs because it allows people more opportunity to engage, especially people who aren't comfortable speaking in front of large groups. But I'm open to feedback, and we can do it lots of different ways. So today, we're going to go back into pairs from the same pairs from earlier. I'll give you a prompt and then ask you to sit in silence for about a minute before turning to your partner to share. So we'll have about 8 minutes in our pairs. So after the silence, decide who will go first and let them speak and don't interrupt them, and then switch. And if you have time left over, you can chat with each other, but first, let each person speak fully. Dialogue is secondary. So here's the prompt, and I'll give you about a minute to just reflect on it on your own. What does belonging feel like in your body? And what prompts that feeling? Thoughts, words, touch, silence, music, solitude, nature, creative expression, prayer, memory. What does belonging feel like in your body? And what prompts that feeling? So just reflect on that for a moment. Okay, let's go back into our pairs. And again, if you're wanting to opt out, that's totally fine. Just say no, thank you. And we'll be back here in 8 minutes or so. Let's come back together in the large group. And Mark, later, if we have people who want to speak, can you bring them the mic? Great. So welcome back, everybody. The downside for me of these small group conversations is I don't get to hear everything you're saying. But I appreciate you for taking the opportunity. So we don't have a lot of time to talk all together, but I have a question that I want to ask if anybody has an answer that comes to you based on what you know now about how you feel belonging in your body. I'm curious, how do you help other people feel that? And I'm thinking specifically, those of you who are members and attending the congregational meeting later, how will you show up at that meeting to create safety, create a space for the other people there to feel that they belong? I wonder if anybody has some thoughts about that. It's okay if not, it can also be a take home. I see a couple in the room.
My first thought when you say that, I think you make other people feel comfortable and belonging by listening to them.
Thank you, Anne. Larry has a thought, and if there are any thoughts on Zoom, Marissa, will you just unmute and let us know?
Well, part of my feeling that I belong is that people seem to value things that I do. And so I need to be sure that when other people, especially newer people, do something, that I thank them for it and point out that it's really important and valuable. Like those kids in the
nursery.
in the nursery, watching Juniper.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing something important. I'm happy to say I said so.
Thank you. Yeah, even when somebody just says something in a meeting, especially something that hasn't been said, just thanking them for their perspective. Any thoughts on Zoom? No pressure. So thank you for engaging in the conversation. September, our theme is belonging. So let's hold it throughout the month. And now I'm going to invite Larry up for our closing song.
Since the pandemic, we have not been singing as much. And there's a reason for that. When you sing, you breathe a little deeper. You get a little bit more of the surface of the sacs in your lungs out into the atmosphere. And so we have been looking for ways of singing, but not singing. And Renee is going to explain to us a way to handle this last hymn or hum. So
Hello, there we go. Okay, sweet. All right, so what we're going to do for this one, there's a video of a hymn from the Teal hymnal, and you can hum along with the melody. Humming's good. Again, we ask you not to sing along. I'm going to teach you a simple drumming pattern to do with it. You can also freestyle if you want, which is awesome. However you want to. So the pattern that keeps happening over and over again with this song is "Come and go with me to that land, come and go." So when you have the come and goes, you can clap or pat on your lap, however you like. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go. Oh, I forgot to do the come and go. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Yeah, so the trick for that one is on the with. You don't clap, and then after the with. So with, bam. That gives you the offbeat. So it's just kind of a fun sound that propels you forward. However you want to clap, though, is awesome. So, all right, can we get the video started? Mm. All right, well, I don't hear the sound, so. Oh, 1 second. Patience is good, yeah.
How about we start with a round of applause for our tech team?
Yay, we love you guys.
Why don't you give us a rhythm and we'll give it back to you? Just any rhythm.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds fun. Okay, why don't we do that? All right, so let's start out with just nice and even. We'll just do quarter notes. One side. You want to switch it up? You can do eighth. With me to that. There we go. Okay, now we got it. It's the magic of our clapping. All right.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. Where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. Where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. Where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. Where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. Where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land.
Thank you, everyone, for trying new things. Our closing words are by Reverend Gretchen Haley. For this one moment, know you are loved, that you are safe and whole. Know that you belong here, here among us, here upon this earth, in your body, however tired or broken your heart may be. For this hour, know that you are not alone. Feel the presence of others surrounding you, breathing beside you and with you, discovering together the way our humming voices rise and fall together in harmony, in hope, choosing love for light, to live with joy and gratitude and praise as a form of resistance. May it be so. Thank you all. Those of you here in the sanctuary will have a very brief coffee hour, and we'll see those of you members of the congregation on Zoom at 1. Go in peace.